Hi, I'm Toby Flood and I'm here to unveil what I think are my top 6 players by position and a manager to have played or featured in the Rugby World Cup. In the front row would be Rodrigo. He's been in the Argentinian pack for forever and been a fantastic player really. He's led from the front, led by example, and is the type of guy I think that a lot of people would follow. So he'd be my first pick for the front row. In the second row would be John Eales. Nicknamed Nobody, as in nobody's perfect, but John Eales, one of the greatest players to have played the game, lifted a World Cup, a phenomenal talent, and a guy I think who everybody looked up to throughout the game in the way he held himself and the way he behaved. In the back row would be Michael Jones, most say the greatest All Black to ever play the game, a phenomenal player, a guy I think who terrorised opposition when he played, and a guy who people had a huge amount of respect for within the game as well. He would probably be my least favourite person to play against at the moment, and a guy who you look back on videos and see was an unbelievable talent. At half back would probably, it's a tough one, but probably would be George GREGAN, just because the length of time he's played. He's won a World Cup, he's played in the final and lost. He's had all the ability in the world, and a guy who you looked up to because he worked so hard at his game, and you hear that through the grapevine that he was a real talent. So he'd be the guy that I think a lot of people have aspired to be like. He set the precedent for how scrum halves should play the game, and just did some unbelievable things in his career, and a real guy who you looked up to and thought that if a guy who was 4'1" could play professional rugby, that maybe someone as skinny as I had a chance. At centre would be Brian Lima, a Samoan who nobody ran into, called the chiropractor, who played in 4 consecutive World Cups and was phenomenal. There's a YouTube thing you can click on that's him tackling Derek Huhard, where he hits him at about 95 miles an hour and Derek stays down for the next week. It's phenomenal to see how he hits, and guys were literally too scared to run near him when he had the ball. A phenomenal player, and a guy who had such longevity in the game, was outstanding, and he'd be, purely on the World Cup, would be my top centre in the World Cup. And finally in the back 3 would be Matt Burke, who for me had a big impact on me personally when I played with him at Newcastle Falcons. He was an unbelievable guy in terms of how he held himself on the field and the way he played, but also to win a World Cup final and kick the goals that he did in that final, and an outstanding Australian side. He really controlled that game, and having watched that, and a real good memory for me was in '99 watching him and how he led the side in terms of his kicking his points and scoring tries. I think he's got the record for most points scored in the World Cup final. He was unbelievable that day. And for manager, it would have to be Martin Johnson. A bit obvious, obviously he's my current boss, but I think in '03 he led the team through thick and thin leading up to that tournament in terms of the years before, and in the World Cup he really shone and led the guys by example. And obviously not the prettiest face to be lifting the trophy in '03, but he did well. So he'd be my guy that I think I would choose for the choice of manager, and so the experience that he has in the game, and the knowledge he has, and hopefully that comes through for us this year.